and it's effective. It works. Really enjoyed it. Somebody made a comment that it could have been lifted from the devotional era. I could see what they're saying, but again, it's just Depeche Mode on point. The Depeche Mode we know, but still fitting in with the album, keeping everything cohesive. Then we move over to So Much Love. People have been saying it has a soft touch, right? Raw nerve vibe. It does, but it's way better. It's way better. It doesn't feel like they tossed it in there to have a fast track. That may have been, an argument for it, but I really do like it. The guitar riff in it sounds really, really old. Sounds old school. That song is growing on me more and more, and I liked it on a first listen. Then we get into Poor Man, and Poor Man is one that I'm kind of stuck on. I wrote on here on my notes, first week track. Music is fantastic. Song's not grabbing me on first listen. It has grown on me quite a bit. This is the one that I'm having just a bit of a time lyrically speaking because it's so on the nose. But I think over a long enough period of time, a lot like, again, going back to Construction Time again, I think over a long enough period of time, this song will end up growing on me more because I do like it. I do like the harmonies in it. I like the music quite a bit. I like the trickle-down line. But again, lyrically, it's kind of in your face and on the nose, and it detracts me a little bit, hearing the message, again, doing that thing with my fingers. But, again, from a song that I'm going to listen to and just enjoy listening to it and kind of tune out on the lyrical side of things, I do like it. One more the last time as we get into closing the record. This has, and going back to my notes, has an 80s vibe, but very Depeche, yet not Depeche. And I know that sounds weird, but that's just what I wrote. This is Depeche Mode now, right? And I wrote Grand again. And again, these last two, Poor Man, and one more the last time I have to spend a little bit more time with because I've kind of been listening to the first half of the album more. So getting back to, if you're going to pitch 2 tracks off the record to make a 10-track record, which I've done before. I've taken, I don't know if you do this, but I've taken like Depeche Mode albums and I've kind of stripped them down and made them my own. Kind of reworked things and I did that a lot with Sounds of the Universe. So stripped out some of the tracks on there, replaced some of them because I thought Ghost, the B-side, was fantastic. I also thought Light was fantastic, and those albums should have been on the record instead of Hole to Feed. But again, that's just me personally. So if you're taking away two tracks, certainly I would take away Worst Crime, and then it would kind of be a toss-up between Poor Man and, looking back at my notes, God, maybe one more the last time. Okay, I'll just get rid of one song. Let's just get rid of Worst Crime and we have a perfect record. How's that? Does that work for you? Look, if the band were listening to this podcast, and they should, if the band was listening to this podcast, I think they would agree with me. I think we're allowed to take away one song, right? If there's one song on the record and the rest of them are solid, I'll take it. When's the last time we had that? It was just one song you wanted to get rid of, right? We go back to Songs of Faith and Devotion. Again, the trilogy, Music for the Masses, Violator, Songs of Faith and Devotion. I'm keeping everything on all those albums. But moving forward on Ultra, and that gives me an idea. Maybe I'll do a podcast of all the songs that I would pitch off to the side. Not exactly the most uplifting podcast, I realize. But, all right, last song on the record is Fail. And let's see, going back to my notes, starts small, shallow, but really builds. And then I wrote large at the end, has a lot of character. Yeah, the music, when the Fail really builds to a nice, big, grandiose end. And it's got a lot of, I keep hearing Blade Runner. I'm a big Blade Runner fan. Love the soundtrack from that movie as well. And some of the background music in there just reminds me a lot of Blade Runner. And it just has this very ethereal sort of feel, and the music is really good. Now, there's one thing that I haven't mentioned about the record that I really, really love. And I've been saving it until I got to the last track to kind of throw it out there. The one thing that really sticks out the most about this, and it's one of the things that I liked about Sounds of the Universe, although they screwed it up a couple times because it just got so muddy and washed in guitar on a couple of tracks, especially Comeback. But it's an electronic album. I didn't feel like Delta Machine was. And, I mean, that's what got me into this band. If this was, the electronics, the electronic sound, the keyboards, that's what drew me in. That's the music that I love. And I love Songs of Faith and Devotion, but we all know they got away from that. And the guitar played more prominence in later releases, and I had been kind of waiting for them just to pare that back a bit. We don't need the twangy guitar anymore. We don't need the guitar riff like you get in Martyr, the single that didn't make it onto Playing the Angel. Love the song, but just that. I mean, I was kind of done. And I really like what James Ford brought to this release, is that he really brought the electronics back up to the forefront. It's not in a way that Violator does. Violator does it better than any other Depeche Mode album, in my opinion. Easily. That just the electronics are pushed to the forefront. I know it's got a blues edge to it, and there's some guitar, but that album is just so rich and thick. This album is rich and thick, and I'm so thankful to get that again. It's not too bluesy. It's not too rocky. It's not too thin. It's got this nice, good cohesiveness to it. And it was the first time in a long time it brought me back to those core feelings of Depeche Mode. It brought me back to being younger in my 20s, back in the 90s, and the Violator tour, and the Songs of Faith and Devotion tour, and what drew me to this band, the uniqueness of this band. It feels like this record is we're out of our rut, we're doing something different, we're breaking new ground. And that's the thing. I mean, they broke new ground. And they didn't do it by going retro either, and that's what I think is so cool. I think we would have been happy had they gone back for nostalgia's big right now. I mean, nostalgia's huge right now. Depeche Mode could have easily gone back to Violator or to Music for the Masses and tried to replicate that. And they probably could have done it with relative ease and effectiveness. You go back and listen to those records, and there's a lot going on, but Violator is really straightforward. I mean, Flood did a fantastic job of production on that record, and I think we can still call Violator a record, right? I keep bouncing between record and release. You know what I'm talking about. But Violator just really, it wasn't minimal by any stretch of the imagination, but it really just was, this is an electronic band. And I remember seeing an interview with Flood about that I think it's on the making of for the remasters, but he talks about how do we combine the electronic nature of this band and while at the same time grabbing onto to the musical lyrical content, to the strong emotional lyrical content. I mean, that's what drew me to Nine Inch Nails when I was so young, is that here you had another electronic band that was really aggressive and really emotional in the aggressive nature of the music and the lyrical content. You were drawn to it. You kind of grow out of that. You can only be angry for so long when you grow up and you realize real life you can't walk around with that much angst. Although I do find myself gravitating back to Nine Inch Nails quite a bit lately. Not because there's anything wrong in my life, just because every once in a while you need an outlet. But this album to me is Depeche Mode breaking new ground again, taking a chance and having it work, right? And they took a chance and it worked, and it's, really, it's a good record. And if you haven't heard it yet, you're in for something really, really special. All right, I got a few minutes to close the podcast out, and it's really funny because I told myself I wasn't going to go the whole 45 minutes, and look what I did. I went the whole 45 minutes. I have not gotten my tickets for the Depeche Mode tour, and that really bums me out. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I mentioned it last week, but they're not coming to Minneapolis. I can't do Chicago because it's the middle of the week, and I have work commitments for my talk show job. And so I'm eyeballing Vegas in September or LA in October. But I didn't get any pre-sale tickets just because I can't plan that far out. So I'm going to do everything I can to see the show live. I would hate, if heaven forbid this happens to be the last tour and I'm not able to see their last tour, that's really going to break my heart. if you haven't listened to the very first podcast where I sort of lay out my history, I've seen the band 32 times live in every single tour since 87. Since Music for the Masses, I've seen every single tour a couple times. Obviously, I've seen them 32 times. So, right now I'm not that worried about it. I've gotten tickets late for a Depeche Mode show before. I just have to figure out which show I'm going to go to. So, hey, Martin, Dave, Andrew, if you guys are listening and you want to fly me somewhere, I'd be more than happy to go. talkshownerd@gmail.com. All right, I do want to read a couple of emails. I got just enough time before we run out of time to share with you a couple of emails. First off, newer listener wrote to me. Name is David, and I want to share this with you. He shared with me his story, and I want to share it with you. So happy to find your Depeche Mode podcast in a recent iTunes search. I listened to all 5 episodes in the past few days. Just turned 46. I've been a fan since 101 came out. Personal Jesus, first ever CD I bought. Grew up in southern Utah, close to Zion National Park. Saw Depeche in Salt Lake City on the World Violation Tour. Saw them twice on the Devotional Tour, once in Salt Lake City, and then now at the demolished Aladdin in Las Vegas. Daryl Beaumonte was on stage with them that leg of the tour. Right, and that's when Andrew had his emotional breakdown, had to leave the tour. Some of my favorite parts of those shows are the acoustic songs by Martin. I also really love the new version of Fly on the Windscreen from the encore of the Devotional Tour. That would have been on the exotic leg. I don't think, that was, they did it a few times on the first leg of the tour, but they did it a lot more on the exotic leg of the tour. I've remained a huge DM fan over the years, Depeche Mode New Order being my all-time favorite, Violator and Ultra, my favorite albums, But Not Tonight is probably my favorite song. My song, too, which is crazy to think, that was the throwaway song. The band was ticked off. I don't have time to get into it, but long story short, the band worked weeks on end on Stripped, and then when they went to release the single in the United States, the B-side, which they spent an afternoon on, But Not Tonight, is the one that got played on the radio. And I love But Not Tonight. So anyway, that's the short version. I love Martin's acoustic version on the last tour. I do too. Really looking forward to Spirit and looking forward to your further explorations of Depeche Mode songs, albums, tours, and videos. Also, massive Star Wars fan for 40 years now, so I'm looking forward to adding your Star Wars podcast to the roster of the other Star Wars podcasts I listen to. Haven't had a chance to yet. Thanks for taking the time to have a Depeche Mode podcast, and may the Force be with you. Brother from another mother. Thank you, David, for the email. And in the short time I had, let me read you Jon Justice, the other Jon Justice, and his quick breakdown of the album, Spirit. Loves Going Backwards, loves Where's the Revolution, thinks Worst Crime is an okay Soul Saver song. Scum stands out, not really like any other DM track, not sure how I feel about it, he writes. You Move, classic DM, like it a lot. Cover Me, similar to Soul Savers, but I like this one better. Eternal, Eerie one from Martin. He says, reminds me a little of I Want You Now, good call. Ends very odd, I like it. Poison Heart, love this Dave track. So Much Love, he says, best song on the album. Poor Man reminds me of Clean, love the harmonies, love the bluesy track. No More, classic DM, really like it. And then Fail, he says, reminds him of The Darkest Star or My Little Universe, I like it. Overall, really good effort, would like them to push the tempo more. No instrumentals. Thanks so much for sharing, the other John. Thank you, John. I appreciate the email, man. I really, really do. And thank you for downloading the podcast. Again, I do it because I love the band, and I hope that I could reach a lot of people who love the band too and want to hear somebody like me yak about it. And so far, you have, and I really appreciate that. I put out a new episode every week. Next week will be episode 7. We'll be right up against the official release of Spirit. Go online and find the making of Where's the Revolution video, by the way, too. Look it up on YouTube. It's a couple minutes long. It's really cool, though. Go and check it out. Thanks again so much for downloading the podcast. Email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. I am out of time. I am Jon Justice. You've been listening to Depeche Mode, the podcast, on the My Nerd World podcast. Again, you can find them on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, and Podbean. Just search Jon Justice and My Nerd World. Talk to you again next week. Have yourself a fantastic week. Bye.
My Nerd World.